다 단어 가지고 주된 라 다저도 통통 잡그 샤신티다 되네 단다 조노제진 따라나다 그 샤신티 니가 그나네 다 투몽동 투몽 근근로데 조나 투몽 근근로 순두텔라 되네 단다 지당글로도 넘바 예다 되네 잠로다 도지 심백감데다 되네 대견도 만달다 라면 난조르제 고네 냠네 나오게 솔때 수모른제 바르라 되네 대 지당그 당가라서 주고라 토머르 휴브가 옛나야 라데 단당근로데 냠네 양 딱바지 난고기 와르라 대점도 마징아라서 두전도 냠네 나오 갑슬라 옛나야 다제 흔로 대 두전도 냠네 나오 툭나 베 펜토 쳔보 임베처나 다단다 테이 탐치가 나온다 소나 추응의 레종 흔로 삽 소아데 다지당가 온드시는 알아서 녀몬바 뽕바다 냠토바 제퍼지 길라 제워르시베가 탑데 응의gel라데네 용기요레데 응의게데 약보제다 응의게데 템보제 에용메용데 흔돌라로레바 임베처나 흔로데 에티니 제퍼도 제루시다 다이타노 감더르 휴바겐도 니미 제퍼감 세타 칼테 칼 양니 양도 전주시네 강국이 빠다 된데 송아들라 틴팅 흔로데 냠네 나오 갑살랑 알아서 두전도 거미야 흔로 제바 나 당홈 토마니 냠네 나나야 되게 와달라 야 단다 장감만 바꾼 진짜 된바게 흔로 두바제 다다디기 두랍라 되네 답대회게 쳐도 소원세 받던데 냠네 나나야 안 되게 와래 강따라야 당흔로데라 니도는 바제 야보제 강국이 야바 소원래.
This morning we were discussing the preliminary practices from both the Thangtong Gyalpo instructions and also from the Taranatha instructions. What we discussed were primarily the common preliminary practices. Now, in these common preliminary practices, these include the meditating on the four thoughts that turn the mind, going for refuge, Vajrasattva, Mandala, Guru Yoga, and it discusses how to practice these. And so when we first enter the gate of the Dharma, then at that point it is necessary for us to practice these preliminary practices. But it's not only necessary at that point. As we continue to do our practice, we always need to continue to practice the preliminary practices. And if we are able to practice our preliminary practices continually, then this is something that will be extremely beneficial for us. This is mentioned in many instruction manuals, where it says that the preliminary practice is even more profound than the actual practice. The reason it says this is that in general we rely upon the actual practice in order to actually get rid of the afflictions, in order to actually develop the experience and realization. So that is the actual method that we use. But whether that will turn out well or not, whether our actual practice will be stable or not, really depends upon how well we have meditated upon the preliminary practices. And so it's especially important that we really meditate well on the preliminary practices. And so here it says that we need to meditate thoroughly on them, meditate thoroughly on them. This means that we need to meditate upon them over and over again. We need to repeatedly, over and over, meditate upon the practices. And so here when we do this, we can do the Ngundra practices or the preliminary practices in a variety of ways. We can follow the longer practice as we usually do and do the practice of that. That is okay. Or if you would prefer to do the shorter practice that was recently composed by His Holiness the 17th Gyalpo Karmapa, then it is also good to do that, because that is a practice that was especially written for this time, and it is easy for us to do. But in either way, we really need to practice the preliminaries until we really get to the heart of the preliminaries.
Tene ta teji so Thangtong Gyalpo ge sangna ta tanda lojong ge mengo dupa je song yore la. Lojong se na tene tanda ta jitang ge ngaran so tuma mepa ne kambe bocha ge on de na nyemon ba hedang da chado dong ngajalla so ba yeba ta de genji chade mambo yeba. 다 연den지 차네 랑긴 강가라 펜베게 데 잠바 닌지 장축 샘데라 데라 데 지금보라고 대점 감바메바라고 요아라 다딜로데 journey 데네 gen지차 데네 녀몬바 헤당당 나절동 저도라서 바디 뇽도 당야다 총도 당야다 다른 메바당야 Tene ta tejeso tanda ya pelya dela kare gogi warese na tene senchi dewa tang dende ge chamba tang dungal tang tande ge nije tang tene tartu tarba tang tamchin chempe kompon la kende ge shongchu ke sen jela jewa dela tene tanda yentenji chani pelwa ta dela lo jang lo jong lo kana jang krese na lo dela jong ge warela Tene ngaranso lojong ke mengo gong de siena tene jai dedu tongling ke mikpasi ne tene longdong jarne tene dedu tongling ke mikpasi pata tene song yo re la te tabu ke lojong ke mengo te kamder te si du chom so te senjin tamje marhi pata train tempa su ji chamba ta ni je jil ji Tene ta tela senjin suyinaya ta ngaranso pama senaya nda pinja senaya nda bodang pumuga nambalanda boje yinaya nda nyendong zaruga nambata boje yinaya nda te senjin kankala ta ngaranso jewa mambolan dreva yeba yinbechirna tene jegi jela jewa shambi chung deba yinba tang Tene te tabu ke tsewa tong shamba tong nyam te dedu tene chul pala yung pen ta chula yung pen ta ten ne ta tenzo senjin suyi na ya ta ngaranzo menji tinto jibi senjin na ya menji tinto jibi senjin la tene ta jiba poi namba tong pemiji namba kanyi na yung rong Te yendo tundrugi jene so toba senjen yena yung tundrugi jene so toba la ta pena ta rangaran so chemde nyarwe ki senjen la sopa yena yung rangin ke rda la sopa taba je yena yung chunong de nepe nya la sopa yena yung sawo de nepe mbosin la sopa taba yena yung te ta tenzo la je dedu ku chorwa yapa je yinpe cherna Tene ta tenzo la dewa tang dewa te lari yung perwa dewa te tsam mepa la tene dewa perwa dewa tang tende ke chamba tang tene te yendo dungal tang tempe senchin yena ta kashi dewa mepa dungal mangpo yepa kashi lula dungal yepa kashi sen la dungal yepa ta tende mangpo yore la tenzu lulang sen je dungal te tong chande ke nije jila chi gugres ta te rang lo jong re nije te chi pe ke se ndabo te kande je gugres na tene tanda ngaranso ke nyen tong zadu la so patabala Shambatan Jinji Jiwala Tesi Le Lawa Yuwa. Yena yang ngarantang mentimbe drawo la so batawa je yena, te la tene Shambatan Jinji Je Kawa Yuwa la. Tene tanda ngaran so Shangpa dan Ninje jewa jela jewa te kamne kandi cheke pato kam kukrese na ngaran la nepar sepe ke dra che yin na ya tela ya dewa tong tende ke Shangpa ranking ke jewa dunga tong tende ke Ninje ranking ke jewa che chaw na tene te sam Ninje lo ya po jong tu pa tabu che chungwa de la tene te tabu ke Ninje tang Shangpa namchi che par to gamba ne chedang thay no se ta chedang ondo se pa ta yin be cherna ta tanda ngaran so cher tang be chu chu gola chu pala ngendo tumo ma yin be ngendo na ba yete gangu ge ya pata te na ne mixal do chang ni je chong chu ge san te la ne lo jongu ge ya pati te ba yin.
Following that, in his instructions, Thangtong Gyalpo talks about the need to train our minds, to do lojong or mind training. And he gives rather brief instructions on this, but he does talk about how we need to train our minds. And when we say training our minds, what this means is that from beginningless times, we've had imprints in our beings. And these imprints are imprints of hatred, imprints of jealousy or of pride. These are imprints of the faults and problems. And there are quite a few of these. But as far as qualities, there are also imprints for wanting to help ourselves and others. Imprints of loving kindness, imprints of compassion, and imprints for bodhicitta. But these are rather rare. And so we need to change, we need to transform our minds, and we need to take the faults, the afflictions, and diminish those, and even eventually get rid of them entirely. And what is it that we need to develop and increase? Well, that is the love that wishes to bring other people happiness. It is the compassion that wishes to free other sentient beings from suffering. And it is the bodhicitta that is the wish to bring all sentient beings to the ultimate state of enlightenment. These are the qualities, and these are what we need to develop and increase within our beings. And in order to develop and increase these within our beings, what we need to do is to train our minds. And so here is where we have the instructions on training our mind. Generally, when we talk about training the mind, we often talk about the Tonglen practice, the practice of sending and taking, the visualization of sending happiness and taking suffering that we perform together with our breath. But here, the mind training is taught very briefly and very concisely. Here it reads, "Know that all beings have been your mother." On page 4, this is. Know that all beings have been your mother, and remember their kindness, and so forth. By doing this, meditate until you develop love and compassion for those who are like enemies. And so here we need to develop love and compassion for all sentient beings. We need every sentient being, whether they are humans, whether they're our parents, whether they're our siblings or our children, or any beings who are our relatives. All of them we have been connected with all of them in previous lives in any of these ways as parents or siblings or relatives. And so for that reason, we need to nurture our love and compassion for each other. And if we can nurture the love and compassion we have for each other, then this is something that is beneficial for us, and it's also beneficial for the others. And so we need to develop such love and compassion for all sentient beings. These are including all sentient beings who are included among the world of humans, whether they be male or whether they be female, and also anyone else. We need to any other sentient being, not just those who are humans, but also those who are included among animals. There are the pets whom we keep in our houses. There are the animals who live in nature and free. There are the the fish who live in the waters, and then the various bugs and worms that live underneath the ground. We need to be able to develop real compassion for all of them. All of these beings can experience feelings of pleasure and pain. And we want them all to feel pleasure. We want them all to feel happiness. We want to bring them happiness. And so that wish to bring all of these sentient beings happiness is the love. That is loving kindness. And then there are also many sentient beings who are experiencing suffering and pain. And we want to free them from their suffering and pain. We want to bring them to happiness. So this wish to free the sentient beings from their various sufferings, whether it be suffering of the body or suffering of the mind, the wish to free them of this suffering is compassion. And so here, this is what we are training our mind in. We are training our mind in love and compassion. But what is the measure by which we can evaluate how well we're doing on our training? The measure is that we develop, until you develop love and compassion for those who are like enemies. So here, when we meditate on love and compassion, it's really easy to meditate on love and compassion for our relatives and for our friends. That's really quite easy. But when you're meditating on love and compassion for your enemy, that is a different thing. That is very difficult. And so we need to meditate on love and compassion until we have really so habituated ourselves to love and compassion that we feel it even for those enemies who want to hurt us and harm us. And so when that love and compassion automatically arises for enemies, that's when we have really developed our love and compassion. That's when we've really nurtured love and compassion within our minds. And so it is until that point that we need to meditate on training our minds. And so this is in accord with the general practice. So here, these are the, in terms of the instructions on the preliminaries, there are the common preliminaries and the special preliminaries. And here, these are the finishing up the instructions on the common preliminaries with these particular instructions on how necessary it is to train our minds in love and compassion.
Tene tate tumonga ngandro korte tate niga kanane sonarela ta tumo ma imbe ngandro tela ta chitang tanda jono jechen taranatha ge sangna ta chitang sachi ge yenra bote thikngu rela ta ngandro te ma imba thikngu la ngandro rombap namsam se ta tangbo ngandro te tentu tene rombap nambasam se lu dan sem dan ngo som de ranging de cham zochu matang war yaba de ngandro rombap namsam sinki de dan de ji sung ye la jen ye rongdol se tang ye la chitang ngaran so sem de shaje chimbo de gamba so la de se ngo ma tre bata ngo ma hi bata de ye yung yo la de ranging ki trovar se be ke ta bata de ne ji ko sam rang char se ta ji ko sam ranging ji char yung yo bata bo ta de te to se ta de ngandro ye ji sam ji ta tri ji gna ji ko ye rang char sung yo ra te gna ko sam rang char se tene te ko ye se du chu ko long ko tu ko dewa chim ko te ye ko sam se du chu ko long ko tu ko sam rang hin ki cha ri te te ye sung ara la tene ta te na ning han ro rong bap na song te la ya tene han ro te la ta tan da chomo ji chen taranatha ka sam na hine je te to long tong ka te ni yo ara la de nane ta tangbo ngaran so hine gom jure hine gom gu bi jun sen de kande re se na hine te la tangbo le tangbo ba yin na nam to ma bon tro ge yo ara la nam to ma bo ti hiwi gi che do la ya hine chi ting sen gong gu ge ya ba che ta le tangbo ba mai ba ta gom yin ba ta ba che yin na ya de ne he sem te la che tang ta ngô tông bà tàng rang hin sarwa sarcha manga bà tela tene nam tong ka trondo kahi kap kalan roa yin be cherna tene gam de tembo yung ya ke chetala hine gam je te kal che ge yo la junsi teacher na hine ge tai ta tene hine ge tai ti ge gam de kan de yung ge yo re sena gam de tembo yung ge yo re te yina ya ti la hirap ge cha de te cham me ba talwa ti ge hirap ge ne lu de salbur thong te long thong le ye ba yin be chena long thong tai de number ni 다 대나네 당보 힘내게 태때라 미베 예다 본담바 미베 예 송디텔라 당하란 속 동보 간다 간디스 검고기 요래 테니 다 대게 예라보테 검사도텔라 테니 본담바테 코니 콘다 펠웨게 탑라 간데 난고기 요래 템바테 다 딘데 바이엔도 템바르세바 다 텔라 테니 콩게 히네제 그 테텔라 미코르 주지타 란통게 테텔라 미코르 다인 다 딘데 바이엔도 테나요 아레라 데나네 담보 히네게 테라 미코르 주지예 바테 데 담보 미코르 담보데 다 땡게요 아레 미코르 담보데 땡게요.
Where did I start? So these are the common preliminary practices in both of the, we've gone through these in both of the sets of instructions. And then following these come the special preliminary practices. And these special preliminary practices, if we look at this in terms of Taranatha's instructions, which begin on page 9 of your little booklet here. In Taranatha's, after the common preliminary instructions, there are the discussion of the three different main sections of this, the three different parts of these instructions. And so the three parts of the instructions are here where it says the actual instructions have three parts. 1, the preliminaries, the threefold letting go. 2, the actual practice, natural liberation of the four faults. And 3, the follow-through, the natural occurrence of the three bodies. And so here, for the preliminaries, there is the threefold letting go. So the threefold letting go, this is letting go with our body, with our speech, and with our mind. And so this is just sort of letting them be natural, not doing a whole lot to alter or change them in any way. And so this is what the threefold letting go is. Following that, the next section, the second main section, is the part on the actual practice, the natural liberation of the four different faults. Now, when we are doing the meditation of Mahamudra and looking at the nature of mind, then often there's the problem that we do not recognize the nature of the mind. We do not see it or recognize it. And so there are these four different faults. And these four different faults can just be naturally liberated. They can naturally solve themselves. And so here, that is what is talked about here, the four different faults and how they can naturally be liberated. The follow-through here is the natural occurrence of the three bodies. And so the three bodies here, these are the three bodies of a Buddha. Now, if you compare the two different instructions, you'll see that in the first one, in Thangtong Gyalpo's instructions, it says the natural liberation of the four bodies. And in this one, it says the natural liberation of the three bodies. When we talk about the natural liberation of the four bodies are the Dharma body, or Dharmakaya, the enjoyment body, or Sambhogakaya, the emanation body, or Nirmanakaya, and the great body of great bliss, or the Mahasukhakaya. And so here, in the natural liberation of the three bodies are the Dharma body, emanation, enjoyment body, and emanation body. So these are the three bodies. So those are the three main sections of Taranatha's texts. And so now we have come to the actual preliminaries of Taranatha's text. The preliminaries, threefold letting go. And so here, this threefold letting go is presented by Taranatha as the preliminary practice, and it has two main sections to it, two different topics to it. And these are A, the instructions on tranquility, and B, the instructions on insight. Now, the reason first we have the instructions on tranquility. And what is the reason for meditating on tranquility first? Well, the reason is that when we are beginners, we often have the problem of having a lot of thoughts in our mind. And all of these thoughts in the mind make it hard to meditate. And so for that reason, we need to pacify them. In order to pacify and make them tranquil, then we meditate on tranquility or shamatha meditation. But even if we're not a beginner, even if we're an old meditator, then sometimes when we're an old meditator, we are meditating upon the nature of our mind. The nature of our mind is in essence empty, but the clear aspect of the mind is unceasing. And because that clear aspect of the mind is unceasing, there are many thoughts that can happen. And so we need to develop stability in our meditation. And the way to develop that stability is through tranquility meditation. So this is very important for us to develop this meditation. And so we need to develop this tranquility meditation. But this tranquility meditation itself is not something that has a lot of full knowing, a lot of discernment or intelligence or prajna to it. It does not have, it can be very stable, but it does not have this full knowing. And so we need to develop some sort of way to really clearly see what the nature of the mind actually is. And this clearly seeing what the nature of the mind is insight meditation. And so here, between these two, tranquility and insight meditation, we first have the instructions on the tranquility meditation. And the instructions on tranquility meditation also have 2 points. These 2 points are the basic focus and the enhancement of that. So the basic focus here, what that means is basically what is it you have to do to meditate? The first thing, the sort of basis or ground on which you meditate, what is that and how you meditate? And then after you have that ground, that basic focus, we need to develop it. We need to enhance it. And so that's why it then talks about the enhancement. And so these are taught in order. And so in order to teach these in the instructions on tranquility, we have 11 subjects of focus. So there are 11 subjects of focus about the tranquility meditation. Following that, there will be 7 subjects of focus about the insight meditation. But first, what it teaches are the 11 subjects of focus of tranquility meditation.
Tene ta te na ne tangpo ta mikpiye te temparela ta te la tangpo kulhong rabote ta ngaran su tangpo gam jap kap chi kulhong rabote ngar gosam ji shawatam ji teme la tor song dupi tene ta nguma ngaran so ge lu ngo ye sam je lekate luji lekate ya ta hachang tanda chimbo sonam sopa la sopa ja chimbo ma jongwa tene ngo ga go ne ya te tar do soma ta tene sam jit number to ba ten so ya ya ta tingen se chebar ji jila ma chi ba te min da bo je la song do samba 다 진짜 간디치 구기 요레세나 다 진짜 데 데미라 만로와지 구그래라 데미도 만로와데 탑 강나 때는 세그레세나 검나 때는 다검 잡나 되니 루치 샤와용 데미 마인바 마게 샤와용 데미 마인바 되니 샘지 샤와용 데미 마인바 제 검나 때 검나 때니 다데 바지 제고 요래 tene gomla temba te yon khande gugre se na temba chunsi je ma to pata se tene gom te la yapu tanga gom te yapu chung sung sam temba ichi na bote tembo na bote ma jung ga pa to ma chi je par to tanga rang ge lu ji go ne ta ngo ga go ne ta yi ji go ne me ge wa cha ne che ge me 대견도 루마테 다 개와도 메개와 가야마인베 루마테야 세게메 다 메개와도 루마테니 메지바타 쳔무 데네 타나 쭈지지 개와용 졸와 레라 다제 Tuji Jigawa Tia, Tambo Tumi, Dingen Nyamne de Kalchawa Chene, Tiniti, Tuji Jigawa Yang, Chitang Duk, Dugi already in Nayatella, Zendu Tetam, Miziba, Zendu Chawati, two meetings and Yamlin Tala, Zanguyaba, Tate, Suandela. Ti Nani, Tatambu Mibi Yella. Rombab number some sundi lu rombab nga rombab san rombab de number some sunare la de nani ta tangbo lu rombab de la ta tanda taranatha ke sona lu nam nong ke chu dai sone ta ti chitan ta baje sunare Teni ta te la Thangtong Gyalpo ke te si jebar sunare la Teni te Thangtong Gyalpo ke te ke nanto ore jebar sunare.
So what is the first subject of focus? What is the real basis of focus for our meditation? Well, this section on the basic focus of our meditation begins with a discussion of our motivation. And this motivation says, all previous activities of the three gates are pointless and have been given up. And so all of the things we have formally done, all of the work we've done with our body, everything we've done with our speech, everything we've done with our mind has really not had much point. Everything we've done with our body, we really have not been able to accumulate all that much merit with our body, and it's not that much, and it hasn't had any point. Similarly, with our speech, we haven't been able to really accumulate much merit. And with our minds, there are so many thoughts in our minds that we've been unable to develop real deep holdings, samadhi meditation. And so these really haven't had any point, what we've done with our body, speech, and mind. So from now on, we need to make sure that we do not do that we do not do the pointless things, but rather that we make everything that we do with our body, speech, and mind, that we bring that to have meaning, have a point to it. And what is the way that we can do that? Well, the way we can do that is through meditation. We need to make sure that all of our activities of our body are no longer pointless. We need to make sure that all of the activities of our speech are no longer pointless, and all of the activities of our mind are no longer pointless. And the way that we can do that is through our meditation. And so we need to do this. And how is it that we do this? From now on, until you have developed a little bit of stability in meditation, so from now on, until we are stable in our meditation and we have real confidence that we are actually stable in meditation. Until we develop that confidence, then there is no need to mention non-virtue and neutral deeds. So we will not do anything non-virtuous, and we will not do anything neutral that's not really virtuous and not really neutral. We won't do those. And there's no need to even mention those, because we aren't even going to do the complicated virtue. So we will let go of effort even towards complicated virtue. So complicated virtue is like doing prostrations, going around circumambulating stupas and things like that. So we'll even give up all of that, and we will just do the uncomplicated virtuous things, that is sitting in meditation until we get this. So from now on, until we can develop this stability, we will not be all that diligent we should not be all that diligent about the complicated virtue, but rather we should be very diligent about our uncomplicated virtue. That is the real meditation. And so here, when we talk about the meditation, for the basic focus of the meditation, we start out with the threefold letting go. And with the threefold letting go, what that means is that we are letting go with our body, we are letting go with our speech, and we are letting go with our mind. This is the threefold letting go that is taught about. And the first of these is the letting go of our body. And here in this text by Taranatha, it says, with your body, sit in the 7 points of Vairochana. And so here, he's just saying, sit in the 7 points of Vairochana. This is the general meditation posture that we usually talk about. However, Thangtong Gyalpo explains the posture in greater detail.
Tene tateya Thangtong Gyalpo ke sauna rombap samje ten jopa te tate lu ngo ye sam rombap samje ten jopa te teya tatanda rombap samje ten ya yung kapsula tene rang mikpan rabote kanti je gogre mikpa to mupa te kanti je gogre se na tene rang lu te tamalpa ta julu chata le trupa namba taba ma impa tene yiram jala salwa yiram jala kandi sargare se na ta tempa tar to korlo tenjo kundo karpo namba ta te tab je la sal tab ne ta te rang lula choyin mepege chirta tene rang lula marape duhi mepege chirto tene tapa yiram jalaye kor saltab ne ta lu khorang dutang de kandi jigo gare se na tene ta tangbo kangbarella kangba doji chitung cha se tene ta te chitang mela chepra yore ta mekhahi tab debu go ne doji chitung cha tuba yung yore mekhahi te tab cha matuba yung yore la tene tab debu go ne nasa mepa dogma dewa mepa ranghin ke doji chitung ke de na ta te doji te tembo rabo ji imbe chana doji chitung ke do ta ya mekhahi te tab doji chitung cha na kangali yore la te se kangba na madewa ta te de yung kare la te tab na na inchi minchi doji chitung cha mi pa go pa yung yo mare la chitung che ne de na ndegi yore tene ta te yendo chitung che ne de na yung ndegi la yang khahi kapka la tsani tene sala de matupa ta lu ge ne tong lu me dewa tene yina ya tene kucha ka ta na de ne gom na ya ha chang ke garwa kan ya yo mare la tene zo rang ke sem te tembur ne pe che to la de ne gom ba te kal che ge yo re per na ta ngaran so tene tanda lang ne gom na salpo ndabo chi yung gre de yina ya te tempo ndabo yo mare la tene nyal ne gomna tembo drabo yuare de yina ya yang masalwa tene nyek trowa la so pa yung ri chena te ta ba mai pa ta ten to de ne gomba de kangba ke tambo kangba ke ne no no ke chu dan je no ne tambo kangba ne tene ta ni ba de lakpa re lakpa ni nyong yo ke sa ja sung ge yuare la tene te yang ta chitang lakpa te chur chala tenso len par ya leka che tene ta te nam tong cho ke tsawan rapo te lakpa ni le yung yo re la ta teacher na lakpa ni nyam par ya se nyam yo ke cha cha se ta nyam yo ke cha cha sing te la yang kosul mandawa te yo re tang nyam yo ke cha cha se du tang ngu so dan ju bong de se na tene lakpa yam ba te pankhala yo di ten to lakpa ye ba te yo ba ta pe na tanda rapport me chi ko e namba rapport me chi ko e sha ya tong ko namba te la nyam ya sung ge yo de la ta te ta bu nyam yo ke sa cha na yong de ge yo de la ya nyam yo ke sa cha se na dra ge on de se na nyam par yo se du lakpa che nam kha la char lakpa che sa gi la te ta tin de se na nyam par yo ma de che char che yan tene te tabu ma yin pa lapa ni jipa na yin se ne yapa ta gom lanking ke lama namba nong ka kashi ke tene pumu ten to lantel ni sanang ke chajan zi ne gomba tene ya sungi yore la te ya nyam yara re tene tomi me pa jipa na yin yapa perna naranso karma pa sumba rangjung doji ke kusum ngote ke nang ne tene tanda luchi ne dutang sum kapsula tene lapa ni pumu ten de sanna che the gomba kapsala dojin chong ko sha ni bumu den the sanan se pa gong ko pata the som yo arela te yin ya ta tanda nyam yo ka sha ja rela te kan tar ya ta te ta bu go ni la pa ni nyam yo ka sha ja so te no no ke chu den jin na ni pa te ne sumba te galsik thambur sang sung yo.
So when we are talking about the special preliminaries in Thangtong Gyalpo's text, on page 4, under B, special preliminaries, it begins with the phrase, rest in the threefold letting go. And so here, when we are talking about the preliminaries, what is our focus? What is our interest in? What are we interested in? Well, we are first interested in the threefold letting go. And so this is, first we start off with the letting go of our body. And so here it reads, visualizing your body as the Yidam deity. And so here when we are visualizing our body, we don't visualize ourselves as a normal, ordinary body of flesh and blood. Rather, we visualize ourselves as the Yidam deity. And how do we do this? Well, we visualize ourselves as described above as Chakrasamvara, white in color. And so we visualize ourselves in that way. Now, the reason that we visualize ourselves as the Yidam deity is in order to stop our attachment to our own ordinary bodies. And also, it is also so that we no longer have the conception of our bodies in their impure form. And so that is why we visualize ourselves as the Yidam deity as we are sitting. And while we are sitting, then the first thing we do is we sit with ourselves in the posture of, sit with your legs in Vajra posture. This is the first of the 7 points of Vairocana. Sitting with your legs in Vajra posture. Now, there are different types of people. Some people can sit in Vajra posture extremely easy. And for some people, well, it's not all that easy to do. But for those people for whom it is easy to sit in, if you can sit in the posture simply and easily and comfortably without any discomfort, and it's just natural for you to sit in the Vajra posture, then sitting in the Vajra posture is very stable and it is very good. But sometimes when you sit in the Vajra posture, your feet just hurt. And when your feet hurt and it's uncomfortable, then it's actually not necessary to sit in that way. You don't have to sit that way. You can also, it's also fine for you to just sit cross-legged. And so you can just sit cross-legged and sit comfortably on the floor cross-legged. Now, there are still other people with different types of bodies, and for some people, it's sitting on the floor can be excruciating. And so you just can't sit on the floor without your body getting really uncomfortable and painful. And so if that is the case, then you can sit in a chair. And if you sit in a chair, that is fine. The main thing here is that you are sitting in a way that keeps your mind stable. It is very important that your mind be stable. And the reason is that, and so that is why we sit, because if we were to meditate in other postures, for example, if we were to stand up to meditate, when you stand up, your mind is very clear, but it is often not very stable. And so then you might think, well, I'll lie down and meditate. So you lie down and meditate, and when you lie down and meditate, then your mind is very stable, but it's not clear. And in fact, it begins to fall asleep sometimes. And so we don't want to do either of those, but we want to we want to be seated, whether on the floor or on the chair. And so this is the first of the 7 points of Vairocana, the point about our legs, that we are sitting. Now, the second point of the 7 points of Vajrayana, second point, I'm misspeaking a lot today, I'm sorry. The 7 points of Vairocana is the hold your hands in the mudra of equipoise. So holding your hands in the mudra of equipoise, the reason for saying this is that our hands are what we do things with. We do all these sorts of different jobs with our hands. We will take things, and then we will put things back. We will do all sorts of things with our hands, and so our hands become like the cause or the root of all sorts of thoughts happening in our minds. And so for that reason, we place our hands in equipoise. Now, when we say placing our hands in equipoise, there are different ways that we can understand this. Now, what this is actually most often referring to is when you take your left hand and then you place your right hand on top of your left hand, thumbs touching, and you put them in your lap. That is the posture that you can see the Buddha Amitabha sitting in. So this is the posture of equipoise. And if you want to sit like that, that's fine. But there are other ways you can understand equipoise. You can look at the word itself. It just means putting evenly. So putting evenly or putting equally. If you have one hand up in the air and the other hand way down on the ground, your hands are not even like that. So it's good to have your hands on an equal, to poise them or place them on an equal level, on the same level. And so some lamas say that you can place your hands on your knees in the posture or in the mudra or the posture of touching the ground. So with your palms on your knees and your hands touching the ground like that. So that is also a way of sitting with your hands in equipoise. The third Karmapa, Rangjung Dorje, talked about this in his treatise on pointing out the three kayas, or pointing out the three bodies. He was saying, in this he said that when you sit, you can, for meditation, you should sit with your hands on your knees. What he said is sit in the posture of Vajradhara, sit with your hands and the earth-touching mudra on your knees. And so we can sit in that fashion with our hands in equipoise. And so that is the second of the 7 points of Vairochana. The third of the 7 points of Vairochana is to keep your spine straight.
Tene tatela galsik tambur sang se nonong ge chu den jin nan sumba sumba te ta chitang ge galsik tambur sang wa te kare re se na lu tambur sang ge ta de tene te ya lu de tambur si gu bi jun sen de kan de je re se na lu ge nang do za yo ba za yin na ni long jo wa long la tene sem te la nong to mang pon chwa da bu je yung ge wa de la tene te ta bu me yung we cher do lu tang bor sang na tene lu je nang do ye be za ten zo tang pon ro wa za ten zo tang pon ro na tene za yin na ne long jo wa te ya da je za ten gu de pan da bo za de chu de pan da bo ta tin de chang na tene long de tang pon ro ma to pan da bo long ka de pan da bo ta long mang bo ro de pan da bo ta long la phon ju tang de pan da bo yung ri wa re te yin na ya za de tang bo ro so na long de tang bo ro long de tang bo ro ta je phon ju da bo me pa tem bo ya po ji se ne ro na tene te la te ne sem te ya rang yin ge sar cha ye pa ten cha ye pa ro yin bi cher na tene tanda kap der sa na galsik tang bur sang se lu tang bur sang se ta te la ya lu tong na za tang na long tang na sem tang song ta tin de jin tang bur sang gu bi ge jun sin te ta tin de ji re la tene lu tang bur sang kap s la ta te lu tang bur sang wa te tanda nong nong gu chu dan je nong sum ba re tene yiba te ndamba chung zi goa sunge wa re ndamba goa te jun sin kari re se na lu tang bur sang ne tene ndamba te tang bur sang ga na te chi nong la ta wa nang yin yung ge wa re la nong la ta wa nang yin se na tene nong to ma bo chu ge jin da bo yung ge wa re la tene ndamba te rang yin ge khorang chung zi ngu de pa yin be che na te rang sor yo ne ndamba chung zi go wa sa ta te lu nong nong ge chu dan je na ne yiba.
It says here, keep your spine straight. And the reason it says keep your spine straight is that we need to keep the body straight. It means we need to keep the body straight. So we need to keep the body straight, but what is the reason for having a straight body? Well, the reason is that within the body there are the the channels. And within the channels, the winds flow. And then it's based upon the winds that flow through the channels that various thoughts can happen in our mind. And so in order that we do not have so many thoughts happening within our mind, we keep our body straight. And so if our body is straight, then the channels will run straight within the body. And then if the channels themselves are straight, the winds will flow straight through the channels. If the channels are bent and crooked in any way, then the wind will also be kind of bent and crooked. It will not flow well. It will be changed and affected. And so we don't want to change the wind. And so for that reason, we want to have straight channels. And so if we have a straight channel, then the wind will flow straight, and it will not be altered or changed much, and it will flow well. And as a result of that, our mind will have more clarity. Our mind will have more stability. And so this is why this is important. So it is important to keep our bodies straight. It is said that if the body is straight, the channels will be straight. If the channels are straight, the winds will be straight. And if the winds are straight, then the mind will be straight. And so here this is talking about having a straight, sitting up straight with our posture. So this is the third of the 7 points of Vairochana. The fourth of the 7 points of Vairochana is tuck your neck slightly. Tuck your neck or bend your neck. I guess we tuck our chins. At any rate, if we think about the way we are, if we are all very straight with our body and we're straight with everything, then our neck is also very straight, and we're ending up looking straight up in the sky. And if we do that, then there will be a lot of thoughts happening in our body. But actually, our neck has naturally is tucked a little bit. It naturally is a little bit bent. So we naturally tuck that way. And so just let it alone. Let it be as it naturally is. And so that is the fourth of the 7 points of Vairochana.
Tene ngabate me tekar ronsorta se ta meke tekar tawate ta tanda ronsu tekar ronsorta ta machu pandaboji sin tagure ya chen tawa yo mai ba maul tawa yo mai ba tekar tawa tene me tsumba yo mai ba ta tende gugi yo la ta tela yo junsen te tanda muti tsumbe chen do ta sungri yo la tene ta nangpa sanji pa maingpe tumta yenta par chewa tawa la tene ta jitin je khomda hla je ki che pa yimba ta tene hla de thu ni na tene ngarang la de jin jongwa tene hla de thu ma ni na ngarang la dunghal jongwa da bo je yimbe cherna tene hla de la solwa tab gu pa ta hla de la de pa ji gu pa ta hla de la ya pu ji gu pa da che pa phul gu pa da bo ta tene tawa nangi ware la tene te ta du che de hla de ka ba yu ware se na ta te ngaran so le ya toa da bo che la yu ya pa du hi ta je pa yin be cherna tene ta te nam ji chen da ta ne ta te hla te la so wa ta hla te la te pa to mu gu ji hla te la che pa phul ta te de che gi ware tene nyentu ngupin turdo ta sungi ware la nyentu pa te ta chitang tipa chung rondan zo ten de ni ra ten ju ge tene je ngara nyemo ba che gre pa te kala ta na nyemo ba ma bo che gre nam to ma bo che gre ta te ta bu nyemo ba me che wa to nam to ma bo min ju me cher to tene u to ta ni ma sa la ta ni tene ta ti ke nam to la te che tra te pa na ki che ta nyemo ba la te che tra te pa ta te li zuru ge che to u to ta wa dorji chin ji te karta sungri ware la dorji chin te ta ngaran sungho dorji tipi ke lo la cha cha chimbo gamba zopa chimbo gamba la so ba ta ji yen na ya chin ta wa yo mai ba ma u ta wa yo mai ba te kara ta ron sor ta wa te kara ta wa ron sor ta wa te ta ma chu pan da bo je la ta gu gi ware ta te ta bo ji se na te kara sar cha ta ten cha ya bu yung gi ware tene ta te je so Trupati, Yakin la Jar, Chitsikin la Jar, Chitsikin la Jarwati, Cerdo, Chetsiti, Kate, Dang de Bandabota, Tindina, Tinekalan Chimon, De May, Tinisan Tonto, Jane Sepala, Tisan Tonto, Jane de Mayon, which at the Jekin la Jarno, Tinik, Ranking, Nepa. Teni chuso tekar yo sita chuso tekar yo pati teni tatanda kitsi kin la jarni chuso tekar yo ta ngarang kai choda so tenzo teka kandi negi yo na te tardo yo pa ta tini tikdo domni tupa che teni dunba te lape tumo nondo lo lape tumo te tene lupu ke nangla lo ne chupi gamshin ke tsap se pa tene lu tambur sangwe ke ta chitang kap ka la tene shen la tene ya tambur sangwe ke tap nang ke yo la ten tandan de gamshin me na ya lakpa ni ke pumba ni ke tumo te yapo chi sang ne tene gamshin ke tsap lu ni li par cha ta ti nang nong ke chu dan jen nang daba.
The fifth point is that we look straight ahead. And it says here in this translation, in my translation, look straight ahead the distance of your fingers, but it might be better to say look straight directly ahead and look naturally directly ahead. Here, when we are looking, we look directly ahead without altering it any way, without changing or altering it any way. We relax. So look directly and naturally ahead. So here we are not looking up and we do not look down, but rather we just look straight ahead. Now the reason for this is, as it is said, the outsiders look up to Brahma's realm, and so the outsiders are non-Buddhists. Mainly, most outside or non-Buddhist religions have the idea that there is a God and that this God created the world. Now, if we please God, then we will get happiness. And if we displease God, then we will experience suffering. And so for that reason, we need to pray to God, we need to have faith in God, and we need to do good by God, we need to make offerings to God. And so for that reason, when we are meditating, well, where is this God? Well, God is somewhere up above us, so we need to look up to God when we meditate and to pray, looking up, to have faith and devotion and make offerings, looking up to God. Now, that's one tradition. Another tradition is the tradition of the listeners, or the Shravakas in Sanskrit. The listeners look down towards cessation. So the listeners are primarily interested in their own benefit, and they are afraid that they will experience a lot of the afflictions, the disturbing emotions. They're afraid that if they look directly out, there will be many thoughts that will happen. If they look directly out, there will be many afflictions that happen. And so that these thoughts do not happen, and so that the afflictions do not occur, they look downwards towards the ground. And so they look down at the ground out of the fear of thoughts and the afflictions happening. But here in the secret mantra Vajrayana, that's not what we do. The Vajra eyes gaze straight ahead. And so here in the secret mantra Vajrayana, when we are doing the practices of Mahamudra and the practice of Dzogchen, then we do not look up, we do not look down, we look directly, naturally in front of ourselves. We just look straight ahead of ourselves without changing it. We just look ahead. And if we do this, then this will both bring stability and clarity. So that is the fifth point. And following this fifth point is the sixth point. The sixth point is about the tongue. Touch the tip of your tongue to your palate. So generally, when if we are meditating with our mouths open, then there will be a lot of saliva that will accumulate and that will drool. And if all this happens, then we'll start thinking about it and paying attention to it, and it'll be a distraction to us. And so that this does not happen, so that we do not drool while we're meditating, we touch our tongues to the top of our palate. Now, also included in this point is rest your lips right on your teeth. So just let your lips rest naturally. So you let your lips and your jaws and everything rest normally, and your cheeks, and you let these all rest naturally, relaxed as they are. So these two together, the point about the palate and the point about the lips, these two together are the sixth point. The seventh point is about our arms, and what it says here is turn in and lock your elbows as a substitute for a meditation stick. So here, often when people meditate, they will use an actual stick to keep their body straight. But here, rather than using a stick, what we do is you turn in your elbows and straighten them out, and that keeps your body nice and straight. And so when you are sitting in this way, then it's like you have that meditation stick there. I mean, it's keeping you straight in this way. So you're sitting with your body straight. And so this is keeping you in a good posture. And that is the seventh of the 7 points.
Tene za ye nya ye le ji le ba ne lu rong ba so ta de ta bo no nong ge ju den ja no nong ge ju den ja na ya tene lu ji 在也是他老板你当刚把你给炸点住，还讲个这么要把热的来吧。你伢也是那马萨尔也的，刚把个马萨尔当老板马萨尔点住，热的热呢来吧呢是他的当的这个jipaga lama machi labchi doma ke songna luni za ye le pa ji se ta ti lu ji ni ti za ye de le po se tene dhamma ya pa de kal che ge yo de la tene kap ka la gom jap ka la khashi ti sin dar ro anda bota khashi ti kale khan ro anda bota de yung ge yo de la ti jon sin de khana te ni yung ge yo de se na tene za ye de nya ye de dham ya pa la te ne te si ta te de yung ge yo de de ta bo me yung che de la lu le ji le pa na lu rong bap so se ta rong bap na ba sam jen na ne lu rong bap te te ba re la tene ta te ta bo im be cher na ta da ta po ta hin nam jar ge tene ti nyu me te ni salwa ga na to song na tene kap ka la tene lu jin tu tang te ya bo de la tene la mixal ge sem ji ya ta de tang bo ne ma lat na ya lu jin tu tang te ya bo je la ne lu jin tu tang te ya bo je se ne sem mai ba ta san yin so na tene lu ji lu chu ten so hyon ro yo la tene lu chu ten so ma hyor wa se ne tene ya bo se na kap ka la tene khong ri ge nyam nyong la lo ma ten so la tene san je ne cha de rang yin gi ni ba na bo ya yong se ge tene song yo la tene ti dan da rong bap na ba som je no ne lu rong bap ti ye ba
Du lutsu shora. Du tsuk shora sa de. De Rinpoche ge lugi kalsa lutsu shora de samna ma yin ba de.
lu ji tsu tsu se na lu ji ya kurang lu tsu sha tsu lu tsu de ma nyom
Then relax and loosen your limbs and muscles. And so here we relax and loosen the limbs and muscles, and this is letting go of the body. So when we sit in the 7 points of Vairochana, sometimes we will sit in that, but we need to make sure to loosen and relax and loosen our muscles and our bodies. And so we want to make sure that we are not too tight in our limbs, and that we're very loose in these in our limbs. So here the instruction is that we need to loosen and relax the muscles, the limbs and the muscles. So the limbs being the arms and legs, and the muscles being the the trapezius and all those muscles in our arms and legs. And so we need to relax and loosen these. In the tradition of the Che practice, of the severance practice, Machik Lachon said that the point of the body is to relax the 4 limbs. And so we should not try too hard with our body, but rather we should not tighten our body, but we should let it relax. This is very important. Sometimes when people are meditating, they'll have the experience of starting to shake, Or sometimes they'll have the experience of getting really exhausted while meditating. And this, what does this come from? This comes out of being too tight with your forelimbs and being too tight with your muscles. And so for that reason, it is very important to loosen and relax the limbs and the muscles. And so this is letting go of the body. Among the threefold letting go, this is letting go of the body. Now, when we talk about letting go of the body, this is something that Dapo Tashi Namgyal also discussed in his book, Clarifying the Natural State. Now, he said that when you sit in the postures of the body, then it is, at first when you begin to meditate, you can pay a lot of attention to the posture of the body. You can sort of ignore, you don't need to worry about the points of the mind at first, but first if you just sit in the posture of the body, then that is good. And you keep your mind on these points of the posture without being distracted, and if you do that, you'll be able to keep your body in good posture, you'll be able to keep your body straight and well and sitting well. You won't lose your posture in any ways. And so when that happens, then sometimes some students, when they're just sitting, observing the points of the body, then naturally they will have the experience of the stable aspect of the mind naturally happening. And so here, this is the point of the letting go of the body. That is enough for this afternoon, but if anyone has any question, please ask. These questions can be about the morning session, they can be about the afternoon session, or they can be about something entirely different. We have a microphone here. Are we supposed to come to this microphone? Please come and make a line at the microphone if you have questions.
When you are looking straight ahead in the, whatever that was, the 6th point or something, fifth or something. Louder, oh yeah. Okay, when you are looking straight ahead and then there's an interruption, something enters your field of vision, and that could be a distraction, then in order to not be distracted by that, one technique would be to close your eyes momentarily, or another would be to look away. In either case, it's observed that there's some distraction, maybe there's less distraction, but do you have any particular recommendation about how to handle that?
Dilane lugine ngapala ne mige tata dilane teka ransor ane tawa de kakala teka tawa kapsula karasugo de chi tongna ne sim yingro de chi range chula chi zuk chi shar songna de ane sim yingro gre de Miami top she kapkala ane mik zoom che yore so kakala de ane par tai de mi ushandala tai yores dera wachena ne sim shira yingro maresa yina Rinpoche de kola ne mixege ane lapta dabo yana
Tela teche tachitang make ngola che mandawa tan tong gre kado kasir majong la so ban tong gre te yina ya ti me chumba yo mahimpa tene takwa tiji su mandwa tenhi te tene ngarang sem ke te so te ta hinne tong long tingin sen jingong la te na ma to make ji su mandwa che make tong gre te na make ji su mandwa ta si le na te yo che chulare.
Of course, we're going to see all these different things with our eyes. We'll see all sorts of colors, all sorts of forms and things, and we'll see them, but there's no need to close our eyes. It's just what we need to do at that point is we need to remember the focus of our meditation, not focus on those. We need to remember to be mindful, remember to be aware. We need to remember what it is our mind is directed towards. Our mind is directed towards the tranquility meditation and the insight meditation. It is not directed towards what we see with the eyes. So when things appear before the eyes, of course we'll see them, but it's better to just relax in this, and that'll work out better.
Could Rinpoche please tell us about Naguma?
The Nigume kola te sunarona.
Nigume kola tanda ngaranso shaja chama yefekare. Tene Naguma ta Nagume chudu kola hirake ge me sala sarre ta neka mayu nan dijimare.
When we are talking about Mahamudra, there is not a whole lot of question about Niguma or the 6 yogas of Niguma. So as I was discussing before, it's probably okay not to discuss a whole lot about that right now.
This is a question for visualizing ourselves as Chakra. Usually I've been taught that when we visualize our yidam in its white form, that this is the illusory body form. Is this the case here, and if not, why not?
Chitan de kaza kolodem chot de ne kudok kabo ge gombe kap de chitan gi ondu chena de kudok kap yidam la kudok kabo da gomna de julu gi kap so yongge resa. De kapso de deboyina sena mayana de junsan chire.
Tatanda ngaranga tanong hiyo kapsala karere sena de si didip hiwe ge cheto namto hiwe ge cheto ten kondo kapol gango yores.
As I said this morning, the reason we visualize Chakra Samvara as white is to pacify our misdeeds and obscurations and to pacify our thoughts.
Rinpoche, it is my understanding that the Jonang tradition was deposed and wiped out at a certain point, but that it is coming back. Can you say something about that?
The chitan de Jonang gi chulu de ngoma de peche nyam drabogi nyanka yoresa. De mangcha shiore sin tensan de yanja tes pedro gedosa. De ko te sunarona.
Tene ta nguma Jonang jetsin nyangene de ne Jonang temba te tesi nyambar te yena ya Jonang temba te pe ugi chu ne tesi nyamba mato tene pe char gi chu la manyang par ne par la tene ti cherna tene pe ugi chu la nyamba te yar so gi cherto tanda Chitang Jang Control Ludri Tai, ni Jonang Tempate Ya Soya, Tegendo Shangpa Kagyu, Tempate Ya Soya, Betzol Mambotna, Tenitela Ti Sabata, Tene Tanda Nyamli, Tap Tenzo Nang, Tenitendo Tanda Zandarin Chitala, Tene Shangpek Dukan, Tenzo. Sandra tatanda chitang tsar sinki yorba tinki tsar ton dawa imbichina tanda jamga kontu Rinpoche lodrin tayege dukan tela Sandra rinchi to sinki yorba tinni Sandra rinchi to la Shangpa Kagyu tang Jonang nyamlin sipege solte tene oma yen tombe tawa tsar do ten ta tende na tene rimba yen do tende jonge tene Jonang temba tar ta tende injirba.
In the past, after the Jonang Jetsun passed parinirvana, it's true that the Jonang teachings did decrease a bit, but when they decreased, they primarily decreased in central Tibet, but they remained extant in eastern Tibet. They did not diminish in eastern Tibet and remained. And so for that reason, they only needed to be revived within central Tibet. And so in order to revive the teachings of the Jonang lineage in central Tibet, Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Tai started to revive the Jonang teachings, and also he started to revive the Shangpa Kagyu lineage. In order to do this, he studied the teachings, he revived the instruction manuals, he composed new instruction manuals, he emphasized the methods for practice, and in this way he really helped revive the teachings. He founded a new retreat center at Sada Rinchen Drak, or at the precious cave of Tsanda, and he made the retreat center there, and within this retreat center, they practiced the Shangpa and the Jonangpa teachings and the practices. He also really emphasized the Shentong view, and through this, out of the nature of interdependence, then the teachings were able to respread.
Rinpoche, when you visualize yourself as Chakrasamvara, do you visualize yourself seated and in a more without yab-yum and in a more peaceful manner?
The Rani and called in Chok Mipekas, the Rani Karasco Dutang Yonachena Yana Sheng Lamba Mipechegas, Yana Yab-yum Yobar Mepa Ravokandina.
Tanda Chitanga Yidam Jala Gombe Kapsala, the Nipo Chipa, Linchi, Tatni, Yalshak, Mambo Yapa, and Rabotat, and the Gongi or Tanda, Pau Chipa, Tap Gomba Insare, Yam Mepa, Tenikia, Yap Dortachi, Yang Depa, Tini Chitang, Kolo Denjo de Hajang 2 number Maimba, Hajang Hill number Maimba, Hima, number Tap Gongi or
Generally, when we meditate upon a Yidam deity, we can meditate upon the single hero, we can meditate upon the co-emergent method and wisdom, we can meditate upon the deity with many hands and faces. So there are many different ways to meditate upon a Yidam. But here we are visualizing the single hero. And so here this is the single Chakrasamvara standing on his legs, and he is not too wrathful in appearance, but not too peaceful in appearance either, but just sort of right in the middle. So this is with the right leg bent and the left leg extended.
Rinpoche, I have a question about the Chenrezig you mentioned Thangtong Gyalpo was doing, and what is the difference between that and the one we do normally in the Kagyu lineage? What is the difference in mantras or visualizations or prayers?
You mean the one that Thangtong Gyalpo wrote and the one that we do?
Yeah. Yes.
So Thangtong Gyalpo ge zebe 저런데 천에서기 초가기 콜라로 근데 타는 잡게 제베게 가서 천에서기 초가당 가서 남준게 제베게 초가디 칸데 가서 카카를 배 다래를 배세
다들 말이 지바래 라 단다 난공가랑게 히에피카서 라드네 잡지칼을 뭐체레 정까마파레 다티 노단 동틀네 자침분중 그 철도 단다 통통 잡게 노단 카자마테 나란서 노쇼 그 로마서 그 두전도 냠니 나야라 나와레라 니티게 노단 자침분중 땡된다고 인사레 다 땡데 선바레라 디 찍바레 때 이나야 다 노단 카자마테 두바제 요아레 드니 텔 yenlo damba tang tene dati riduk ne yongya tenzo surzo kasa naware mato yin zo tanda Thangtong Gyalpo song terare.
It's the same practice. It's the same practice. This is the practice that Kala Rinpoche gave and that the David Karma gave. And it's called the practice that benefits beings pervading space. And so that's just the name of the practice. And this is the practice that Thangtong Gyalpo composed. And that later the Kala Rinpoche and the Karmapa gave to students. And it's like it's a real connection there that allows it to really benefit many sentient beings. So it is the same practice. That being said, however, the practice itself is very, very short. And when we do the practice, we insert a 7-branch prayer, and we insert the prayer for the beings of the 6 realms. So those are all inserted. But other than that, it is what the Thangtong Gyalpo composed.
Yeah. Tatanda chuse de kakanso.
So now we have actually run out of time, I'm sorry.
Sanje nawa daye da yesu jo tuje jambo dam yendo samba tuje donala sanje janze pame koje ngor deje monza bade me baye dewa chenche jave shinganter Dani dene sembe jurmata jewa shingi parma chebar Tere jine nande shabdon sho deke dake melam dabande Choju sanje jansen tamje ge me drubra jinje ladu so Teata bensende awan bodhanai so nande tanje zebani tone nye bedranam pamjene Gyagana Chibala Chubai Sibe Tsole Dro